So it's been a while since I've done any filming of any description, so I thought I'd give myself something quite ambitious to tackle. This is a Dagger. It is an 8-inch blade and then a 4-inch handle. It should be good if I can get it. The bit I'm worried about the most is the grind, so let's give it a go. First things first, I need to cut it out. As you can tell, this will be a hidden tang blade. But what I'm going to try and do is, I forget the name for it, but there's you do the guard, and then there's another piece of metal that runs around the outside, so it should give quite a unique look. Going for a coffin handle as well, which I've never done before, so again, a lot of firsts on this build. It should be quite entertaining. So the next thing we're going to do is grab the piece of steel. I'm using, I think this is 4.5 off the top of my head, and then we're going to glue it down just using some contact adhesive. So I'm just using this quilt basting spray. I have no idea where you can get it. I'm assuming craft shops. I just steal it from my wife, but don't tell her that. Good shape, and then just a good thick coat. Get it nice and close to the edge, and go for gold. So I'm gonna let that stick down overnight and come back to it in the morning. Next thing we've got to do is cut out the shape. So we're going to use the angle grinder to get a rough profile in, and we're going to move to the belt grinder to finish it off. So without further ado, safety equipment. So as you can see, we've got it roughly ground to shape. We'll go fix this up on the bolt grinder. Alright, so we've got a fresh 50 grit belt on here, and we're just going to get it so that we can go towards the lines. So, let's crack up. Okay, so we got our shape roughly ground out. We'll still neaten off the shoulders and everything once we actually get a little bit further on, as well as these recesses here. But we'll put it over our template and see how we did. And I think that is pretty much spot on. So I'm fairly happy with that. On that, I'm going to call it a night, and next step is to grind in the bevels. Never done anything this big before or this intricate, so this will be quite fun to have a go at. Yeah. Alright, what we're going to do now is neaten up the shoulders, but to do that we'll then need to start laying some stuff out. Before we can do that, we need to sand this off and make it accept that ink. So this side's not too bad, I'll still touch it up, but this side we've still got a lot of the glue and the paper on it. So we'll grab some sandpaper, we'll just use some probably 120 grit and just knock all this off. So I've got this chucked up, it's pretty self-explanatory. I've got a bit of sandpaper, 120 grit, and a flat stock. Just going to wrap it around like so, and then I use a little bit of Windex to wet it down as opposed to water so it doesn't rust. We'll do both sides now. Now just turn it around to the other side. Flip it over, repeat, and we're done. Easiest way to do this is to treat sandpaper like it's free. As soon as it stops biting, just throw it, don't try and keep working with it. And there we are. Now the edges don't need a touch up because they were already done when we used the belt sander to square up the edges, so they're still pretty good to go. Now we need to mark stuff out. It's quite hard to mark steel straight, so I'm going to use this jumbo permanent marker. You can also use things such as blue Dicom or standard engineer's layout fluid. I just find that this works better than all the other ones, and it's the cheapest one as well. So just mark all the way along like this. Wait for it to dry, and then we'll do the reverse side as well. We can also do the edges while we're waiting, and we'll save a bit of time later on. Generating template. Yeah, so that top side's pretty much dry. Flip it over now. Put it down and start again. I've had a bit of thought about this as well, and putting this on has kind of confirmed it. I'm going to go for a dark blade, so we'll go through a bluing process later on in the build as well to get a nice dark blue. And then we'll go with something contrasting for the handle. What we'll do next is lay out the center line. So it's pretty easy down this end. It comes to a definite point, we know what that point is. Up here, we're just going to measure it, half it, and mark that. So let's get my calipers, zeroize them. It is 1057 at the top. Let's call it 1060, so half of that. Okay, so we've got our 5.3, close enough anyway. Going to lock that down, mark from both sides, just so that if there is any bias, we'll get the middle of it. And then using a nice straight edge, we can use the inside or the outside of the calipers to get that final edge. Flip over the other side. So what we're going to do now is neaten up these shoulder pads. So here's the way I do them, is to have a reference line of where we want things. So I'm going to get a square. So I like where they are, but as you can see, they're not square. So I'm going to go slightly past the last one so we can re-reference the lines. Hold it tight, grab my calipers again, and mark this off. So I've only marked it on one side, not the other, because we're going to have some file guides which will set this for both sides. What we are going to have to do for both sides is the line that goes in here, where we're going to measure how deep we want that cut. So we don't have to do anything fancy with this one, we're just going to eyeball this. So we're going to measure out from here. We know that this one's a smaller one. So we're going to clamp that down with our hand. And we're going to mark in here. That's one, you can see the line there. Now if you're using a mill, you wouldn't have to do this because you'd be able to get it square in your vise. However, I don't have a spare couple of thousand to spend on this, so I mark both sides so that I can confirm that it's square even by using hand tools. There we are. So What we're going to do now is get our file guide, put it there, and make sure everything's square. So you can do this by hand if you really want to, however I highly recommend a set of file guides. They're fairly cheap, you can make them yourself, or if you're a little bit lazy like I am, you can get these from most shops. Just clamp it down, or get it roughly in line, just finger tighten these. Alright, and then we're going to confirm that this is square. I'm happy with that. I'm going to do another little finger tighten, the flat part. Using the Dremel, we're going to grind up to these lines and using the carbide file guide as a hard stop. So it'll be easy to describe. I'll do one of them and then I'll show you what I mean. So as you can see, we've ground right up to that line on this shoulder. If we flip it round, onto that shoulder as well. So starting to look neat. We'll do the same for this side now. Hopefully that index there is not too shallow that it won't look like this on the other side. But if that is the case, we'll just have to adjust this side to make it look on this side as well. Alright, so the other side now. Okay, so we've ground up to those lines. As you can see on both sides, we're pretty good right at the top on both sides. It'll still look a little bit odd because we haven't squared up the shoulders up here yet, but we'll do that at a later time once we've started doing the profiling of the blade. So the next step is to start the rough grind of the bevel. So the Dagger, unfortunately there's 4 of them. We've got to try and line them up as best we can with the center line. So pick where you want the file guide to go, put it up here, and we'll get back to it from that point. There's a few ways that you can get the center line here, using calipers or whatever. One of the easiest ways, and honestly the best way I've found, is get a drill bit. Make sure it's either slightly oversized or undersized of the piece you have, which gives you a little bit of play. So then what you do is just find a nice flat surface, make sure the blade's sitting square, get your drill bit, and then run it along the edge. So give you a line, yep, flip it over, and then do that line on the other side as well. Now what this does, I've probably used a piece that's slightly too close to the size of the steel, but it'll give you a nice, should give you 2 lines, in this case it gives me 1 thick line, to aim for as you start grinding. So we're going to do that to the other side as well. Hopefully this one will come up slightly better than the other one. Okay, so the belt sander is squared to the work surface. I've got this setting in my bevel jig. I've put it slightly forward. What we're going to try and do is figure out if we need to carry forward or back fairly early on, and we'll make the adjustments. What we're trying to do is get to that center line without touching this line through here, and then we'll refine that at a later date. So erring on the side of caution, we want to go back this way rather than full that way. We're going to leave about 1 mil per out here. We're going to then go through tempering cycles before we go into the quench. We want to keep it slightly thicker going into the quench so that we get less warpage. I've got a bottle of water here just so that I can cool it down. You don't need to at this point in time, it doesn't matter if you overheat the blade. However, because I use just my hands, I don't like using gloves because they've got a thing about them being sucked in here. I've already lost part of my fingers through this before. I just like having the blade at a temperature where I can handle it still. So yeah, let's crack on. As you can see, it is way too shallow, so we're going to crank it all the way over and try and chase that line back. Let's try there.
and I'm pretty happy with that. We're going to leave the tip fairly proud at the moment. You can see we've got a relatively neat line all the way through. What we're going to do now is swivel back the other way and see if we can get the same going that direction. Oh. So no, I'm not. I'm going to try and flip it. So.
Now I've run into a bit of a problem where this is hitting this and it's no longer allowing us to get there. So what I'm going to have to try and do is turn these file guides around without losing the geometry. So what I'm going to try and do is clamp things at the front so that it like lines back up perfectly, and then try and wiggle it on as best as I can. So let's see how that goes. Okay, so it looks like my idea's worked and we've got it slap bang back in the spot that it was before. We should now be able to get the belt to grind right into that file there. So that's what we're going to try and do now.
And there we are. I am beyond stoked with how this came out. I am very, very happy with that. What we're going to do now is try and neaten these up. We're not going to chase them too much in case we screw it. So it's just that one there that we need to neaten up.
Now let's just knock the shoulders off and line up the back here. So what I've done is set the bevel guide, or the file guide, sorry, to the top. I'm just going to use this to round it off. I'm going to put both on this side, so I'll flip the camera. But other than that, it should be good. We're going to have a little bit of overhang so we get a soft shoulder on the other side. There we go. You just use your edge of your fingernail there, run it along. There's no gap whatsoever, so that's what we're after. So this is my forge, well, heat treating thing. All it is a bread oven, sorry, a bread pan, and a leaf blower. Not a leaf blower, sorry, a mattress inflator, which you can see there. Just make sure you get the one that is powered by mains and not the one that's powered by a battery, otherwise they don't last. So what I'm going to do is put the blade in there. I'm going to build up some charcoal around it and light it. Now, there are a few ways you can light this. Me personally, I'm lazy, so I like to use a gas burner. So let's see what that looks like. You can see my little helper in the background. So what we're going to do is a process called normalizing. We're going to heat it up a couple of times and letting it air cool. This should break up the grain structure in the steel. Now that that's red hot, We're going to take it out and just let it cool down for a little while. Alright, I can now hold this in my hands again. So let's fire up the forge. There should still be enough heat in it that we don't need to do anything with it. And heat it up again and let it cool. Now what we want to do before we get into the oil is get it to a critical temperature. When all the molecules are going to align, and when it quenches it's going to stay. That's what keeps the knife solid. One of the easiest ways to do this is for 1080, correction? Yeah, 1084, which is what steel I'm using, is you can use a magnet, and when it gets hot enough, put the magnet on it. If it loses magneticity, is that the word? It's good to go. So, that's what we'll do. When you're doing this, go backwards and forwards. This will decrease the amount of chance that it will warp. There you go. Having a look at it. It's pretty straight. I don't think we need to do anything with it. As you can see, it's pretty good. So it should escape the fire. And it does. Now what you're hearing is it can't bite in. So this is a piece of softened steel. What do you want? There you go. You wanted a kiss. That's the sound it'd make if it hadn't. Once again, nice high clear sound. Sort of a lower sound. So what we've gone and done is just lightly sand the top of it, just with a bit of 120 grit. Just so we can start seeing some of the colours as they come through. We've got the oven at 200 degrees, provided my son doesn't play with it like he normally does. And we're going to put it in here for 2 hours. Here you go. We're going to put it in here for 2 hours. Take it out. Hey, what are you doing? Let it air cool and then repeat the process. So 2 hours at 200 degrees twice. Yeah. So we finished our tempering. We did 200 degrees Celsius, I should add, for anyone out there that still works in measurement. So yeah, 2 hours, 200 degrees and twice. So we finished that up. You can see it's got this kind of a hay to a yellowy colour in the background. Sorry, the reason why we temper is after the quench, the blade is extremely hard and it would hold an edge fantastically. However, it's very brittle and would probably snap. If it's not hardened, it's too soft and it won't hold an edge. So when you temper it, you kind of get the best of both worlds with some limitations. So it's not going to hold an edge as well as a purely hardened blade. However, it's not going to not keep its edge, if that makes sense. So keeps its edge, won't break fairly well. So what we're going to do now is put this back on the belt grinder and start sanding up these bevels. Hopefully we don't mess it up.
We've got a fresh 120 grit belt on here. We're just going to neaten this up. We're trying to get as much of the scale as we can, and then we're going to start working our way down to the final finish. So we're just going to do this nice and slow, quite controlled. Once we get the desired width that we want and a scratch pattern, then we're going to go up to grits, probably either a 400 or maybe like a Trizac. We'll see how it goes.
And so yeah, I'm just going to keep working my way along, slowly getting the edges down. So they're still a little bit thick. I'm just going to keep working that down and then we're going to start sanding. It looks a bit stark up here. We'll be able to get that with some hand sanding down the line. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with how it is at the moment. But I'm just going to continue with this and I'll see you when I'm done. Okay, so we got this done much better than I thought just by using the belt sander. So we're not actually going to do any hand sanding. There are a couple of discrepancies that the camera's picking up. Most of that is just like oil and stuff left on there. There are obviously a couple of things that we could neaten up, but I don't think we actually need to, because what we're going to do now is we're going to blue the steel. It's going to give this nice dark colour. So you can see the top bevels have come out really nice. So we're going to hot blue this in a solution that requires less than the tempering temperature, so we don't ruin it. So what we're going to use is Markley Express Blue. So I'll show you how that's done. The product we're going to be using is this Markley Express Blue. It operates at about 100 degrees, so it's perfect for what we need to do where we're not going to ruin our temperature. Things that we need, a little cup, and that's what we've poured our solution into. You're going to need a sponge of some description. I use these wool daubers that you get from most leather craft shops. 2 containers, one's just a dirty container to catch all the drips. One is going to be full of hot water that we're going to continuously boil through the kettle. Different ones each time, otherwise you'll probably ruin your kettle. The knife yourself, some steel wool, and a blowtorch. The blowtorch is only necessary if you can't get the liquid to dry on the steel. However, we should be fine with that. So what we've gone and done is clean this up with just some detergent. We're now going to put this into the oven at 100 degrees Celsius for a couple of minutes while it warms up. Okay, so it's been in there for about 10 minutes. We're going to grab it out using some pliers because obviously we don't want to touch it ourselves. Just as a precaution, we've got gloves on as well so we don't get any of the oils from our hands onto the blade, otherwise it will ruin it. As I pull the knife out, I'm going to start the kettle. By the time I do this, it should boil and we should be good to go. So what we do is grab our dauber, put it in here, and put it on the blade. So this blue rust, this brown rust-like substance we're getting, that's actually what we want. It's not anything bad. So, may have not been hot enough, so what we're going to do now is just use the blowtorch to dry all the metal off. I'm going to repeat this 2 more times, and I know it does look real bad at the moment, but don't worry. What we're doing is using the blowtorch. Didn't realise that was out of frame, apologies. Flame, fair way off. Just coating it. So I've left the oven on, because we're still going to need it. It does look like we've ruined it. I don't know how well you can see that. There you go. So it's a bunch of brown rust and it looks absolutely horrendous. I'm just going to leave it here for now. I'm going to get some boiling water. I'm going to reboil our water just so it's fresh. And then we're going to leave it, put the water in here and let this soak for about 2 to 3 minutes. And then we've got some steel wool, which we're going to take a little bit of, and then we're going to give it a scrape once we do it. 2 minutes. So you're going to take it out and then scrub it. We're going to try and keep the steel wool going in the one direction, which will be down the blade, or back up. We don't want to do any side to side motion, otherwise we'll start introducing some scratch patterns that we don't want. Just going to pick it up. It's quite hot. Put it in our hand. and start. So what you're looking for is making sure no brown spots remain. There you go. Just gonna let this dry, make sure that there's no brown spots on it. We're gonna dispose of this water so it's ready to go for the next hot batch. As you can see, it's a little bit streaky, but for a first one, this is looking incredibly good. So after a few more, this should look amazing. So we're gonna stick this back in the oven, get it heated back up to 100 degrees, and go again. And there you are. So that's only 2 coats in, and it's looking phenomenal. It's probably the best I've ever done, so kind of glad you guys got to see this as well. We're gonna do this another 4 times still, just to get it looking absolutely schmick. So now we've finished the blade, what we're gonna let it do is just soak in some oil overnight. So we've just got some honing oil here. Just gonna put it on quite liberally. Should actually help if I had a paper towel. There we are. See, a nice black oiled blade. It's looking phenomenal. I'm so stoked with how this is coming out. But it's looking really, really nice. So thanks for following along with that one. We're going to finish off the blade in a second part. The next part was going to be creating the handle. So we're going to be doing a guard, 3 spacers, a frame that goes around this, and then a coffin handle. And I've got some spalted pear, which should look quite nice when it's done. So yeah, thanks for following along, and I really hope you've enjoyed. If you have enjoyed, please subscribe, thumbs up, and comment. Everything you do really helps me. And if you really want to, I'd appreciate it if you did share it with your friends and family. Thanks very much, and I'll see you shortly. Bye.